Good evening and welcome to OPC Season 2, week number 1. We're into day number 3 now. I'm your host, Kevin AVRL Walker, joined with me this evening, Matt Pixie Carroll, as we have 3 more exciting matches on the way for you, including the debut of Flash Wolves in this season. After this, we will have seen now 7 of the 8 teams in Season 2.
And the big thing with that, it is the return of the Season 1 champions, and they are also playing against their biggest rival, not just in the OPC, but in Esports as a whole. Flash Wolves versus AHQ is going to be an absolute clash of the titans. But first,
before we even get to that action, we're going to have Hong Kong Attitude taking on Libalent Supreme. So the team representing Hong Kong versus the team representing Japan. Libalent Supreme coming in through the OPC Season 2 qualifiers, and Hong Kong Attitude finishing as the number 4 team from Season 2.
and this is going to be an interesting one. We've talked a little bit about these teams just already in this week, because we have had the pleasure now of seeing both of these teams play on these first 2 nights of competition. They're now coming up head to head, and really both need a win here quite badly to kind of prove their caliber, set where they are.
I definitely have to agree with that. Libalent Supreme is one of those teams that does come in with the weight of Japan on their shoulders. It's something we talked about before. It's a bit of a storyline for this team, because we had Sun Sister, we had Detonated Gold from Season 1, finish in the 7th and 8th placements of Season 1. So for a team like Libalent Supreme now coming in from Japan with a lot to prove, they're definitely looking to avoid the 7th and 8th placements again in Season 2, but already starting things off 0-6 in terms of map score, 0-2 in matches.
And the thing is, I mean, one of those games was against Ardian just last night, and they actually lost against Ardian in the promotion relegation tournament, qualified after beating Talon after that. So that's not too unprecedented a result, but like we were kind of saying, because of that, because they've had these 2 0-3 defeats now, they are very, very hungry for a win here. But honestly, Hong Kong Attitude are in the exact same boat, and in a way, it's more startling because of how meteorically they were coming up at the end of Season 1.
Of course, if they are losers, then there are winners, and Ardian has claimed now 6 of the maps off both these teams. So we have Hong Kong Attitude sitting at 0-6. We have Libalent Supreme also sitting 0-6 in terms of map score, and Ardian was the team that won 2 of those matches, 1 against each team, and now Ardian's going to be playing after this, but both these teams are now losers from that match. Something you do got to consider, that because it is a double round robin, you now have one of the best teams out of your way at least.
That is actually quite a real factor. You're completely right. I would actually say the more, I don't want to say shocking, because that makes it sound like it's this really unprecedented thing. Honestly, it's not, but I think the more startling win for Hong Kong Attitude, look, the day 1 game against Ardian really was teams kind of feeling each other out, and even Ardian are kind of having that. Their performance last night did look better than their day 1 performance as it was. But actually, last night's performance against Mega Thunder for Hong Kong Attitude has been the more interesting result, I think, because that's the one that, to me, kind of says they're maybe not coming back into this on the same level as what they left Season 1. I don't think it's the same level as they started Season 1. They're definitely way above that.
Yeah.
But they clearly need to push themselves first back to that standard, and then we've got to see how far beyond that old standard they can go.
And I think as well, you know, it does look like, it does look that way, but also the other thing I have to kind of consider here is I think all teams have stepped their game up, and it does. Even you look at that 24-hour turnaround from Mega Thunder day 1 to day 2, they really stepped it up once again, because they started out a little bit weak. They had that 0-3 against Machi, and there it is from day number 1. You can see that 3 maps already, and Machi had a great run in that initial day. Machi did struggle a little bit yesterday as well when they came up against AHQ, and AHQ was one of the roadblocks for Machi last season. A 1-3 score. Machi did get something on the board there, but unfortunately not enough to get the win. But Mega Thunder probably that team that I think had that sort of, like I said, 1-day turnaround where they had some issues coming into day 1. They did look a lot stronger coming into day 2, and now into day 3, their biggest test yet.
And that's the thing, right? This very first weekend is going to be a little bit difficult to pull any major data from. We had the same thing really happen in Season 1, so the first week or 2. You get a bit of an idea of where the teams are comparatively, but there's only so much you can extrapolate from that. Because like we just said, in the case of teams like Hong Kong Attitude, these teams that are returning from Season 1, they're going to be looking to hit that mark, that Season 1 mark, you know, and honestly, because there's been change-ups, there's been roster swaps, there's been meta shifts, Doomfist is now live. That's a very significant shakeup in itself, on top of other balance changes that have gone on in the interim. Right now, these teams, as well as kind of feeling each other out, are still just trying to set themselves back on that level where they were. And it is also a comparative level from Season 1. Let's not forget that. I mean, we can only say Hong Kong Attitude were coming up well because they were beating AHQ and Blank. But if it turns out that AHQ and Blank both really struggled this season, then we can't really use that as a marker. So Hong Kong Attitude right now exist in this interesting kind of vacuum where you could look at what's happened these last 2 days and say, oh, maybe there are some issues. Or you could look at what's happened these last 2 days and go, this is still a really strong team that looks better than Season 1 in a lot of ways. And it's really hard to call exactly where they're at, even as the standings currently have them tied for last.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at those standings while we have the time here, just to sort of catch you up on what has been going on. Ardiant and AHQ in first, equal 2-0. Machi and Mega 1-1 each. Flash Wolves get to play a match. Blank get to play a match. Libalent Supreme and Hong Kong Attitude now on the bottom of the standings at 0-2. So you do start to see why this upcoming match is very important for both. Before we get into more details about what that match is, just a reminder, about what the OPC format is. So if you're not too familiar, home and away games is what OPC is all about. 8 of the best teams in the Asia Pacific region will be battling out. 4 of those top teams will make it into the playoffs at the end of the season. 6 weeks of double round robin play. Each team will have an opportunity to be the home team and then an opportunity to be the away team. If you're the home team, you get to have map picks 1, 3, and 5. The away team will get map picks 2 and 4. And we'll meet the teams.
And we've already kind of touched on these teams a little bit just in the sort of general sense, but I kind of want to just go back to what we had in the standings because there's something we mentioned a couple of nights ago now, and I think this is going to become a very significant factor across this season of play. We don't have a Detonator Gold and a Sun Sister here, right? We don't have teams that just kind of struggle, right? Everyone here either survived Season 1 or earned their spot in Season 2 via the promotion relegation tournament. And by the way, of those 2 teams, one is currently at the top of the standings. There's also been very few games. It's really hard to say who exactly is top and bottom, but because these are the 2 quote-unquote bottom teams right now, the one who takes the loss here is going to be the one who has to fight the absolute hardest because there's a lot of very good teams in this tournament, and at the end of 6 weeks, 2 of them are risking elimination, basically. We'll probably be going into a kind of promotion relegation cycle again, and much like Detonator Gold and Sun Sister, may not come back for it, depending on the caliber of teams that try and come up through that. So whichever team picks up a loss here right now is really going to have to work overtime to push back up past 2 other teams in the standings to try and get back to a level of safety, which they must then maintain.
And then we talk about teams being at the bottom of the standings. We also talk about teams that rise up from that. You know, you mentioned there will be a team that obviously has to win here and a team that has to lose. The team that has to lose has got a much more difficult path now through the regular season. But Hong Kong Attitude has to personify one of the main storylines from Season 1, which is a rough start going into a bit of a redemption run very late into the tournament. So one of these teams could still make that happen. Hong Kong Attitude has already done that in Season 1. They started beating playoffs teams in Season 1, but you also do not want to be coming back that strong that late again, especially if you're Hong Kong Attitude, because you've been in that situation. You don't want to necessarily repeat that situation where you just fall short of the playoffs.
Exactly, and that's the thing, right? You don't want to end your first week being that team that didn't get any wins, especially when you played 3 games in that weekend. So it's going to be one of those teams. One of these 2 teams is going to be that team, depending on how this goes. Just by the way as well, on the notion of Hong Kong Attitude beating playoffs teams, this is something that's, I think, quite interesting, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it much yet, and we will be able to talk more about it later tonight, so I'll hold most of this for now. But, of course, one of those teams was AHQ, and there were some questions about AHQ's performance specifically, not even necessarily relative to Hong Kong Attitude, but Hong Kong Attitude here tied for last, AHQ tied for first. All doubts removed, and there's going to be a lot on that matchup later tonight.
Let's talk about the map pick, because it has come up now. Hong Kong Attitude, as the home side, does choose to pick Nepal. Remember, if you get to pick the map, you also get to pick the starting side. Hong Kong Attitude will get the Assault and Hybrid as well, leaving Libalent Supreme, the first Hybrid, and also the Escort pick later on. I think while we had a chance to sort of scroll through all the members there earlier on, one member that has stood out to me throughout the past 2 days has to be Shailin on the Hong Kong Attitude side. This man, in every situation, with your team's winning, with your team losing, has been stepping up to the plate. He hasn't had the crazy pulse bombs that a player like Kant has from Machi. He hasn't had the just solid consistency on a good team like DM has, but everything else he does, because even when Hong Kong Attitude is behind, he has been someone that's really turning around fights for his team, really giving his team an opportunity. And you really got to think, compared to some of the other top tracers in this tournament, Bacon Jack, we'll see you later this evening. And when you look at a guy like Dion from the audience side, he hasn't had that chance to show it because his team has been sort of in a winning position constantly. We haven't really seen DM pull that kind of weight that Shaolin is pulling for Hong Kong Attitude just yet.
It's been really interesting because there are no bad tracers in this tournament. I know that sounds like a really obvious thing to say. It's like, well, of course there shouldn't be any bad tracers in this tournament. This is meant to be the best teams in APAC. And yeah, sure. The thing is, though, we have to look at tracer play comparative to players like you mentioned, Bacon Jack, and also I Eat You Up. And the thing is, at the end of Season 1, we were actually ranking Shaolin in there above even players like Kant, and the name is escaping me right now, but AHQ's main tracer player.
Shared by Kelman.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the sort of the comparative point that Shaolin was hitting. I would say he has stayed on form. So if you want to look at, is Hong Kong Attitude hitting their Season 1 standard? Well, as far as Shaolin is concerned, absolutely.
And I think for the rest of the Hong Kong Attitude as well, they're not just hitting that Season 1 standard. I think they've gone beyond that now because of Ting and Randy with the other two players that have really stepped up to the plate. Now with Jin Cal, otherwise known as Holiday Cal, taking another spot on the bench as we head into the first map, Shrine.
Yeah, truth is, a lot of these teams are very good, but let's see which of these two teams comes out the better, and let's see which of those two teams it is in this opening skirmish. And Hotade rather, out the gate on the Doomfist here. This will be interesting. He has a decent Doomfist, but we've really yet to see many Doomfists shine.
And absolutely, I think Hotade has been a better Doomfist so far that we have seen because he's one of the factors that kept Libalent Supreme alive against Ardigan yesterday in their match. So I am expecting Hotade to hit those shots. He killed DM on the Tracer a lot. He's probably looking to do the same thing on Shaolin today.
Yeah, honestly, they've just had to hit the go button here. Hong Kong Attitude are doing a good job of zoning them, and that means that Hotade has to be really careful with this Jasper losing the mech. It means that they kind of have to have the retreat flagged. They do trade for Randy's mech, so Hotade is keeping his team in this one a little bit, but the point cap has gone over. They may just want to wait here for Jasper to come back. Oh, that's a pulse bomb. That opens that right up. Hong Kong Attitude sealing the deal on that one, right as Libalent Supreme were playing the what-if game.
And that is Shaolin doing exactly what I'm talking about. This man is doing work. He must have heard me just earlier. I said, look, he doesn't have the crazy pulse bombs that Kant has. And he says, you know what?
I'll show you.
Here's what it looks like. He doesn't stop there. He gets another 2 kills. And for Libalent Supreme, yeah, they got a kill onto Randy's mech. They didn't do anything about it. And the cap went over to Hong Kong Attitude very quickly. So I want to see a little bit more objective pressure, some more pressure on the actual cap itself.
And the thing is as well, they've got the Winston, they've got the Doomfist here. They want to be getting really aggressive, and they're just not just yet. They're trying to go for it now. Pepper is going on a bit of a wild goose chase here. The Transcendence has been forced out from Mango Giant. That is good for them, and now Hotade going in with the ultimate. Sound Barrier running should keep him nice and tidy through that. Into the back line. Really struggling for targets. Selene is down as well. They have to get a pick now, or probably just call it a day, but Darrington going down. Randy honestly pulling work, and Shaolin again, the pulse bomb to close this one out, and just the lack of getting a pick in response for that one there meant Libalent just really didn't have legs in that fight.
And Supreme as well, Libalent Supreme, and now playing this sort of compositional catch-up, as I like to call it, because Pepe had to change from McCree now into the Tracer, about to get his first pulse bomb, and Shailen's already landed 2 and collected 3 kills total with the 2 pulse bombs. So Hong Kong Attitude now at about 78%. They're so far ahead, and Libalent Supreme look like they're only just starting to find their legs a bit.
Yeah, they're really just one good fight away from closing this one out, and honestly, it could be as simple as Randy getting the right kind of placement on a self-destruct here. But that is the only ultimate they have to go on. Oh dear, Pepper going down to CQB. Good counter pick though onto Mango, keeps them alive in this fight for now, but Hotade has to back off for a moment. Darrington already forced to use the ultimate, and actually, they've used most of their resources already. Pepper needs to close something out with the pulse bomb. Hotade picking up a ting means they can get on the point now, but loses his life straight away. They're struggling to get these last few, and honestly, Hong Kong Attitude could even take a loss here.
It's not out of the question, but I think Hong Kong Attitude should just manage to hold it on to the still cap, because Shailen's not being dealt with. Hong Kong Attitude going to flood back into this.
Wow.
Hotade went down. They got ultimate.
And Shailen again, yeah, just zooming towards the point where that Transcendence kept them down pat there. Libalent can't even quite push it over the line here. Hong Kong Attitude, like I said, they could have actually afforded to let the cap go over, but in the end, you're right, they did not need to as Hotade gets picked off. Pepper finally finds his counterpart there with the help of Selene, but this is looking just about closed out. And honestly, the moment Libalent men to step off, the overtime is going to disappear. There it goes, Hong Kong Attitude 1-0 up.
And from Hotade as well, I think, you know, the man has had some pretty good moments on the Doomfist, at least from yesterday, at least in that match against Ardia. One of the best showings was from Atade on King's Row against Artie. He got a number of kills with the rocket punch onto D, and we didn't see that today, at least not so far, against a guy like Shailin. Small mechanical errors from him as well. You see him just sort of overstepping from his seismic slam, like not really catching Randy, flying past him a little bit. Just small things like that are really not pulling the weight for Libalent Supreme. I don't want to single them out too much because I think for the team as well, they wanted to enter with the McCree from Pepper. Couldn't really find Shailin with that. Couldn't find any picks for that. Couldn't find any good flashbangs. And in fact, the opposite happened. You waited too long. Shailin came in, double kill on the pulse bomb, gets another 2. Suddenly, Hong Kong Attitude way ahead.
Yeah, and I'd say the other thing that Libalent weren't quite pulling there was the trigger. They had this very aggressive team comp, and I pointed this out during the game as well, but they just didn't quite seem to have the confidence to execute. But look, first game of the day, first map at that. Call it, I don't know, a bit of rust, a bit of nerves maybe. This is a pretty important matchup for a lot of the reasons we've already stated. And it could just be a moment of getting the momentum up, shall we say.
You know, you mentioned nerves, but nerves might be all on the other side because of Hong Kong Attitude. I'm only seeing smiles and a bit of a serious face from a Ting there. But, you know, everyone else is enjoying this so far, and Randy is going to be a player they're going to talk about again because yesterday he showed up. He showed up when Shailin died. Don't forget Hong Kong Attitude, despite some really clean performances overall, haven't actually gotten themselves a win yet. And this is probably where they're looking to make their mark on that board. And a young player like Randy coming in, I believe he's only 16, maybe just turning 17. No matches played in last season. Now on the starting roster for Hong Kong Attitude, and you can see why the man's pulling his weight.
Yeah, and by the way, that is on the starting roster over their captain, Holiday Cow. So I imagine there is something else at play here as well, and I did touch on this on the first night. I wonder if there is maybe Holiday Cow is wanting to watch the games without playing them to get a better idea of what where the state of the team is at in this first week. That is all conjectural, though. At the end of the day, Randy is in, Holiday Cow isn't, and you're completely right. He is so pulling his weight. It was hard to notice it much then because of how much work Shailin was doing, but for this one, keep your eyes on Randy, folks, and you'll see it. You'll see it all happen.
I want to talk about the other side a little bit as well, because for Libalent Supreme, yesterday was important in the way where you sort of consider for Libalent Supreme, it's a bit of a measuring stick in terms of progress. You opened the season very far back in the qualifier against Ardent, where you went down 0-3 in what was a very one-sided game for Ardent. They didn't have to try very hard to win that one. You had an opportunity yesterday to then see how far you have progressed, and also against a new Ardent roster, and arguably perhaps even a weaker Ardent roster cutting out Thorncut and Gangfly, but now they also went 0-3 against that. So I think for Libalent Supreme, a bit of a wake-up call.
Now this is going to be a little bit spicy. Libalent Supreme again going to be running this pharmacy like they were last night. Mui now out on the Doomfist, so we've got that mirror. We'll see who pulls more weight.
Mui has been one of those players.
Wow.
Okay, what? Both players
never mind. No one pulls any weight. Both Doomfists are dead, and it's all down to who owns the skies here. And actually, Pepper on this Farah is doing a good job of zoning Hong Kong Attitude out there, not falling prey to the same thing. And suddenly, a Ting is a little bit isolated. Should be able to retreat here thanks to the bubble, and Darrington is trying to make it hard for him. Actually, a Ting might struggle. This is the point open now. Libalent kind of had the positioning, but they haven't quite taken advantage of it. There is a window still for Hong Kong Attitude to get on it, especially with Jasper down. And here they want to come in now for the contest. As the fight's going to break out in earnest. No one quite picking up the pick, though, and I think Hong Kong Attitude's smart to just back off in that one for the time being.
Yeah, I think losing Mui there, Hotari went down, but it was better trade for Libalent Supreme because Pepper's uncontested. You need someone like Mui to actually shoot him down. Mui returns as a soldier, but he is also a respawn, and now Hong Kong Attitude playing from behind a little bit. They will find a couple of picks early on to get themselves back in the game.
Wow, good raise, though, by Celine keeps them in the fight here. Jasper already picked off again, though. He did not have the mech when that raise came through, and this is all the defensive ultimates coming out for Hong Kong Attitude. They've just got more staying power now. Darrington throwing out his ultimate just to try and stall. Oh dear, as is Hotate. And that's rather Pepper. And that's a little unfortunate. The fight was already a little bit pear-shaped for them. They could well have held onto those ultimates.
I think Libalent Supreme opened up well with this composition. Now they're going to be coming in rather behind. I do agree with Pepper that he swapped off from the Farah onto the Pepper, and that's something that you have to consider because it's a lot better for Pepper to be playing the Farah while they actually have control of the cap, and now pushing into Hong Kong Attitude with Mui on the soldier, far too dangerous.
I do feel they didn't quite take advantage of it once they had the cap as well, but in any case now, Hotate with the Meteor Strike, see what he's able to find. Looking for the Diva, gets a good bit of damage. Closes out the mech of Randy. That's a good pickup for them, but they've traded with Pepper, and Jasper losing his own mech as Mui's able to open up. Does hit the back out, and Hotate punches him on the retreat. Shailin, though, turning it back around one more time. Don't call it a comeback.
You never forget about Shilin. This man is making plays, and he was probably, for me at least, the third best tracer in the competition in the OPC Season 1. Now he's looking like he wants to take top 2, if not top 1. I think if you're Bacon Jack right now, you've got competition on your hands because no matter what the situation is, and you've seen it now over the course of 1.5 maps, Shilin has that presence.
As you say that, the presence is removed from the game.
Hatari is a tracer killer when he's on Doomfist.
And he has managed to find that one that's open, that's straight up as the 10 closes down. And Libalent, once again, just getting a bit of that confidence now. Randy, you're going to lose the mech here. We'll actually throw out the self-destruct. This is a bit interesting because the team is already a little bit scattered. Mango goes down just as the Transcendence comes up. I think he was maybe wanting to draw something out of Libalent by stalling the fight out longer, but in any case, that is one less resource Hong Kong Attitude will have for their re-aggression.
Hatari's been pretty good with these punches so far, and that's definitely worked out well in his favor. You got to consider that every single cooldown of the rocket punch is an opportunity for Hatari to just get a free pick. And after you get Shilin, well, he's been so far the biggest player on the Hong Kong Attitude side. You take him down first, suddenly you see the Hong Kong Attitude side get dismantled.
Speaking of dismantled, already having a bit of trouble breaking into the mainstay of this fight. Hatari goes up with the Meteor Strike, mostly to save his own life. He is going to find a safe place to drop back down. Not a bad use of the ultimate there, but that is one less resource now. Jasper back in the next. They're actually taking their time here. Mango's forced to use the Transcendence. That may just mean Hong Kong Attitude has to fight now if they're going to fight at all, but Mui down was the only other resource they had left. Sound Barrier committed, and Libalent have a good opportunity to take this fight and run with it now. Lane goes down, but they're still getting the pressure on here. Good pick onto Mango Jai. Pepper pulling the weight there. Hatari is getting singled out, but Libalent still have the positioning. They can at least stall this point up beyond the 90% threshold as well, if not win it outright. Pepper still pulling so much weight here. Mui finally returns though.
Here comes Mui, yeah, you're absolutely right. Finally returns with the tactical visor as well, but hasn't found any picks just yet. Shilin's still trying to find something as well. This guy's been getting a lot of kills, but currently he's finding not a lot. Pulsebomb did come out, nothing to come from that. The Hong Kong Attitude, a Ting and CQB pick up something.
Yeah, that's the one to finally come over, and Randy was able to use his self-destruct to kind of preserve his life. We'll get back in the mech for this hold. They are lean on resources, but Libalent actually used up all of theirs as well. Weren't quite able to close out the fight, and honestly now that's going to hurt them.
Both teams really, both teams really committed hard there. Libalent Supreme to start with, the Hong Kong Attitude didn't want to quite give up that fight, and they really had to try and come back quite hard. Mui with the tactical visor, Shilin with the pulse bomb. Everyone wanted that to come through, but I think for Libalent Supreme, getting to the 99% was very important.
That's a very good pick to open it up, rather. Mui going down, but Darrington, they're lacking tanks, good trade backs, but Libalent are now looking very lean on the health pools. Hatari is only just getting into this fight, has the ultimate, but they need to be able to stick around this point here. He's going to have a bit of a hard time. He's really looking for Mango, but he just can't get it. No one's on the point, and those tanks going down was just great target selection from Hong Kong Attitude, dismantling Libalent in that last fight. But honestly, Libalent really kicked and screamed there, pushing themselves up to a 99%. That was actually very well executed for the majority of the game by Libalent.
And I'm talking about the moment where Hatari really opened it up. How did Libalent Supreme get that 99 in the first place? Well, it started out by taking the initial fight. Pepper on the fire. He was able to open up the other team, but when Mui went down, both Doomfist died, but he stayed alive, and they got the 33-ish kind of percent off that. Then they came back in. Hatari, initial kill into Shilin, then converted another several number of kills with the rocket punches, even cleaning up CQB on his retreat. That's what then allowed Libalent Supreme to continue going until 99%, as well as the fact that they committed a lot of ultimates to make sure that they were going to stall out for the maximum duration possible.
Yeah, I'm also going to go ahead and go back to a bit of what I said after the first map, and that is, I think Libalent are shaking off the rust a little bit here. It's a little unfortunate that has resulted in a loss here on Nepal for them, but in any case, they did look better in that game too. They still made some mistakes. For example, they didn't quite capitalize on getting that first point cap. They didn't get back out into the open space to maximize what a use the Farah could get. They kind of waited a little bit too long for Hong Kong Attitude to come to them, but then they had a very good attack when they lost the point and were able to hold it for a very, very long time. So, you know, call it even, but again, better than game one, rather better than map one of Nepal. I expect them to do even better still when we come into hybrid now, which will also be their map pick.
The big question I have for the Hong Kong Attitude side at least is, I got to look at Mui a little bit here because he did seem a little bit unimpactful throughout the entire series. We've seen now his Doomfist, we saw a little bit of the Soldier. The tech visors weren't really coming into play at all. It was mainly Shilin, and part of it is, I think, Shilin, and in some regards, Randy even stealing the spotlight away from Mui, but you kind of want a little bit more of it out of this guy, because you look at a team like AHQ, which right now looks a little bit similar. You do have now that new flash, brand new Tracer player in form of Rap, and he's doing a great job. But Dizzy never has the spotlight taken away from him, and that's something that Mui, unfortunately for Hong Kong Attitude, hasn't filled into.
Yeah, I think that's quite a valid point. And I was sort of talking earlier about the sort of no bad tracers thing, but you aren't just the level of your tracer. And what we did actually have a bit across Season 1 was a lot of good DPSs, and then sometimes the second DPS, which tended to be the tracer player, struggled a bit. We don't have any tracer players who aren't really up to snuff, but what we do have is that sort of alternate DPS. And look, it's not strictly your tracer and your other DPS. They are both your just DPS players. They chop and change, they swap about. They tend to have one that leans towards the tracer and the other that leans towards the soldier or the Genji or what have you. And right now the Doomfist. But you're completely right about Mui there. He just seems to not quite be matching a lot of those other non-tracer DPS. Again, it's not that hard and fast, but that's kind of where he's sitting right now.
Well, it does look that way, because when you look at a guy like Shailin, and if his team is losing, if other players are down, specifically if Mui is down, Shailin picks up the pace, he puts his carry pants on, he's able to find kills. Then you look at the situation, how did Libalent Supreme get so close anyway, get to the 99%? Said already, that came off the fact that Hotare got a beautiful pickup onto Shailin early on with the rocket punch, so Shailin goes down early. Then what does Hong Kong Attitude do? And this is where the pitfall starts to really reveal itself, because this is when you expect someone like Mui to pick up the pace. And yes, Shailin went down. Now it's your turn to show what you're made of and why you're on this team. And unfortunately, Hotare got away with murder there.
Yeah, I think you actually make a good point. And actually in that specific fight, Hotare was the one who closed out the kill on Mui. But the other thing we have to just acknowledge briefly here as well, Mui was a pickup from Talon Esports, which was the team Libalent actually beat in order to qualify. So that is something that may just be playing on Mui's mind. He's seen these name tags before, the ones that are killing him, and they killed him before. And it could just be a little...
like
getting the NAM flashbacks. In all seriousness, not quite that intense, but it could actually be just a little bit of a factor of that, There is a bit of pressure on him, You can imagine personally there's this feeling of, look, I don't want it to be, to seem like I am just this weak link that was in Talon that was beaten by these guys. And sometimes you can just kind of psych yourself out. Again, that's a little conjectural. Maybe let's talk about the next map pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just to finish that off, though. I think Mui actually was probably the shining star of Talon coming out of the Talon roster, which is
why he's been picked up.
Exactly, which is why he's currently in the OPC. But yeah, the next map did come up, and it was King's Row, and it is also Libalent Supreme's pick. So Hong Kong Attitude did take up map number 1. 2 and 0 on the Nepal. So if you're not too familiar, last season we had best of 5 control. This season we're doing best of 3, so speeding things up just a little bit. It seems like every team is speeding up just a little bit as well. The entire sort of tournament is a little bit more compacted. We're going to see a lot more action.
Yeah, and the thing with that is it means you don't have that same kind of recovery time as you did last season, but also we're not going to end up in a situation where, 3/4 of the way through, the standings won't be able to change all that much. They will still remain fluid throughout the bulk of the tournament, short of some extraneous circumstances. And we are already acknowledging how close a lot of these teams seem to be from top to bottom. But King's Row, out the gates now, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and just to add to the format talk a little bit, because you talk about the format being halved, literally halved. We've gone from 4 round robins to 2 round robins. Suddenly each match counts for more. Every map, every match now has so much more weight attached to it if you want to make that top 4 in the playoffs. But yeah, you're right, we are into King's Row.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is indeed going to be Hong Kong Attitude on the defense first. Libalent taking the attacking side there. And this is interesting, running this. Reinhardt Zarya also going to be out the gate with a Reaper. Nothing too spicy about it, but I'd be curious to see how this Widowmaker Doomfist plays into it.
It's not going to be a Widowmaker for too long. This was what Libalent Supreme ran last night against Ardian. That was their best showing against Ardian, was this map, and they specifically chose to attack against Ardian, and now they choose to attack again into Hong Kong Attitude. If they had that kind of performance against Ardian last night, I'm expecting great things from Libalent now.
Yeah, you'd certainly hope so, at least. I mean, this is their pick, this is their decision. They must feel that this is a strength point for them. Otherwise, why would they do it? Let's see now, wrapping around the side, how they opt to aggress here. Hotare just kind of fishing for targets. A team wheeling around. They need to be careful to not get too separated here, though, Hong Kong Attitude, because, of course, some of those members are still more up on the high ground, but here they are trying to get into the thick of it now. Getting beaten back, and that means Libalent are on the point. They're kind of on the wrong side of this respawn as well, Hong Kong Attitudes. They're going to have to find an opportunity to actually attack now. It's a really great piece of positioning by Libalent, and the opening pick on a Ting should be enough to blast it open. Pepper does get traded off, though, and they lose Jasper's mech. They need to close out on Randy here, but they're struggling to, and now Mui's able to get back into position with that Deadeye. Only gets Jasper, but that's all they needed. They forced the Transcendence, and Libalent are going to have to give up the point off the back of that.
Yeah, certainly with Shailin cleaning up Hotate as well, getting himself double this nano boost. Probably doesn't need it, but you know, it's there. Shailin's got to be careful of Celine as well. But I want to talk about Libalent Supreme's composition here because it does feel like they're playing a little bit of Roadhog, at least what old Roadhog used to feel like in the form of Hotate's Doomfist there. He's just fishing for those punches, and if he gets one, it's usually a kill.
The one thing they did get, though, is 2/3. Hong Kong Attitude had to stall that last one out. The Earthshatter gets no follow-up. This is a little bit of a rough start, and they're forced to fight through this sound barrier now as the Graviton Surge out, but Hotate, honestly, no one's really going to go down from that. Hotate fishing out Mango Giant means losing Jasper's mech, not a big deal. Oh, that's a combo, though. Mui, what was that we were saying about pulling weight? He absolutely cleans up that one on what was a dire situation.
Yeah, there you go. Headshot to clean up Pepper as well. And the second Deadeye in record time for the guy. So if you're ever wondering if Mui, at least on this map, is doing his job, he's definitely doing his job now. He got one kill with the Deadeye early onto Jasper. This time he gets a little bit more in the most crucial situation for Hong Kong Attitude, but not quite over just yet.
Yeah, Libalent not going to wait any moment there. That's a good Transcendence Force using that Earthshatter, but they haven't really got much for it. Picking Hotate is one thing, but they lose that tank. Hotate will be able to get back into the fight early enough now, and they're very lean for ultimates. Committing now, this Nano Boost Shailin does get the one healer. They pop Jasper's mech as well. Now Libalent has to be careful how they go for this one. They can't really afford to lose any more members. They do lose Jasper. A Ting has a longer walk than Hotate. That could be all they need.
Absolutely. A Ting's going to have to charge all the way back up here in the straightest, narrowest path he can for Libalent Supreme, though. 1 minute and 11 seconds remaining, and they do have 2/3 of the cap gone. So in terms of progress here, this is certainly workable, and I certainly do expect them to be able to cap it out as they have, you know, a decent amount to work with. No ultimates for Hong Kong Attitude either. This is now the situation Supreme can do well in.
Hotate was looking to get the one shot on Shailin, didn't quite catch him on the pillar though, but here he goes now looking for the tanks. Again, they're trying to take out a Ting, and it does pay off, but already losing their own tank, plus Pepper, and they're struggling again. The Meteor Strike not finding much except for giving the Zarya a ton of charge, and now Randy with that ultimate charged up with all those members of Libalent dead. They're looking in very good shape for what will be their final defense here, Hong Kong Attitude.
Yeah, and the tables have certainly turned now for Hong Kong Attitude as well, because they were in sort of a rough moment. They lost a pick early. They got a Ting picked out who has been the target of many of Supreme's pushes so far, but now we've got ultimates. Hong Kong Attitude, they're sitting on a bank here, and Libalent Supreme, whatever advantage they were working with before in their push, is now gone.
Oh, look at this by Shailin. He's looking to get a cheeky Death Blossom. Gets right into the thick of it. Keisuke is the only one to go down, but that could be all they need. Shailin just barely able to keep alive as well with that Wraith Walk. Plus, the Bio Grenade and CQB closes out Darrington. That's a little unfortunate for himself. Jasper, mechless. That's big. That is a big catch, but they are lean on members. Jasper desperately getting back into the mech, and it will pay off. This could be all they need now as they close out on Shailin. They do lose Hotate, but Darrington about to get back into the fight. Randy, with this boost and a lot of charge, can do a lot of work, and indeed he does. Jasper down and out for the count. Darrington stalling out with the ultimate, but they are just too short on members here. The Shatter gets a little bit displaced, catches no one. They are getting beaten back, but the members are alive. That's all Hong Kong Attitude need. The Deadeye on Keisuke could just close it out. They're struggling here, Libalent Supreme, and it's going to come down to the wire no matter how you slice it, but the flashbang headshot on Pepper means no Libalent toes on the point, and that just barely keeps it down pat. Mui pulling his weight there, AVRL.
Yeah, no, it really could have gone either way as well. I think Mui was one of the players that was able to keep them back in. You got to go back to the Death Blossom Deadeye combo there from both of those players. I call that one the Black Watch combo because, you know, looking at back at the lore, but, you know, both of those players, Shailin and Mui, we talked about Mui being kind of having his spotlight stolen by Shailin on multiple occasions, and this time around he does shine a little bit brighter. You do have to question a little bit what would Shailin have looked like had he been on the Tracer instead. It did look like he was somewhat less impactful onto the Reaper, but it does seem that way when you got such a good Tracer. On the other hand, though, his Reaper was still doing work, so you can't fault that.
And the thing I think has to be noted as well is Hotate was often fishing for Shailin specifically. If not him, then a Ting. And actually, generally speaking, a Ting was going down more often than Xiaolin was.
Tough game for him.
When Hotari was going hunter-killer on either of those two. So that also has to be respected. Part of Xiaolin looking like he's not having impact is actually him doing some damage and then surviving the attempted one-shot and pulling back and actually slowing down Libalent. So that's not ideal for a DPS, but he's not dying. He's not losing his life to that. You're right, though. It's hard to not compare it to Xiaolin's Tracer.
I got to talk about a Ting here because it's good that you brought him up because he probably had the hardest game out of everyone on Hong Kong Attitude. Constantly picked out and an easy target for Hotari when he's playing the Doomfist, but you'll probably take it. You'd rather have your Reinhardt be the one pushed out of the way, punched against the wall, than someone more crucial like Mui, someone more crucial like Xiaolin, who did narrowly dodge a few good punches. And in fact, something that is, I guess, beneficial for Xiaolin on the Reaper is a lot more survivability against Hotari's Doomfist, rather than just getting one shot if he was playing Tracer.
Oh, you're completely correct here. In any case, 90% flat is the market to beat for Hong Kong Attitude, and they have 4 minutes to do it out the gate with their own Doomfist again on Mui and a triple tank lineup.
Yeah, so Ting gonna go for this Reinhardt once again. I have enjoyed Randy Zaya so far, so he will be going back onto this D.Va sort of play. Libalent Supreme gotta get aggressive though. They're not going for the Doomfist anymore, and I'm kind of missing it. I do kind of want to see Hotari more on the Doomfist. It would work quite well against what Hong Kong Attitude is doing.
I did like that move by Libalent, but Hong Kong Attitude able to survive it. Both teams now reset as Hong Kong Attitude make for the point. Libalent going to have to wheel around. They are trying to catch someone on the backside of this movement, and Hong Kong Attitude are doing a really great job of covering their path.
Definitely taking this high ground maneuver right now. This works against Libalent Supreme, but would work a lot less well if Libalent were running something like a soldier here, but now they're going to get surrounded. Hotari has to look for an opening somewhere.
Yeah, and they lose Celine as well, and Darrington. That's a good dive. Mui just getting straight in, and no one can seem to get past these tanks. They only just trade back onto CQB, but honestly, he's going to respawn quickly enough. Hotari needs a huge Dragon Blade here as he's lost Jasper. What's he going to be able to find? He's already so low. Can he even get anyone? No, he can't. Xiaolin, even on Winston, he dominates the kill feed, and I don't think there's any members of Libalent here close enough to contest this one. They're going to dive in with Darrington. He's going to get a little bit of follow-up, but he's already going to be dropped down before he can get the ultimate. No one's on it. Kisuke tried, and that was quick sticks for Hong Kong Attitude.
Yeah, they're definitely Libalent Supreme get a couple flashbacks now from last night against Ardi. If you watch that game, map number 3, Horizon Lunar Colony, looked pretty much just like that.
If Mui had PTSD, Libalent really have PTSD.
And in fact, a little bit worse because that Ardiant Libalent Supreme series was much closer than what we just saw. So for Hong Kong Attitude now, it's almost very difficult to sort of judge performances based on previous performances because even day to day now we're seeing big change-ups. Libalent Supreme performing worse against Hong Kong Attitude on Kings Row than they did against Ardiant. It just makes it very difficult, I guess, to judge where teams are sitting.
And it does just feel on the whole there that Libalent Supreme's target selection and the execution thereof was just a little bit lacking. It wasn't bad. I'm not ever going to say that it was bad because actually they did have a plan. They were executing on it fairly well. They were looking for Xiaolin. They were actually getting him quite low. They didn't just have that extra little bit to get it over the line, whereas Hong Kong Attitude did. And the thing is, last night against Ardian, they actually did have what it took to get it over the line in a couple of different places. So I really feel like this is less of an indicator of where Libalent are at right now. I feel like this may actually be, I don't want to use the word off night, but the consistency...
That's 2 words.
You're right. That's why I can't use it. But the consistency isn't quite there right now.
Yeah.
That being said, it is only the first week. And this is exactly the sort of thing we expect to see in opening weeks of something. We expect to see the teams that are inconsistent and how well they're able to bring up their consistency. And I do honestly feel like Libalent are very close to actually being a very scary team here.
The problem for Libalent is, first week, but we do have a lot less weeks, and we're only working with 6 weeks. And next week doesn't get any easier for Libalent Supreme. I have checked the schedule. They're playing Blank and then Flash Wolves next week. So, I mean,
top 2 teams from season 1.
If you're coming out of this a little bit weak, you're not going to have fun next week either. Let's take a look now at some of the replays from that match that we just saw. This is going to be this Libalent Supreme still attacking.
Yeah, and this was right towards the end. So they got caught in this graviton, but it didn't get too much done up until the point where suddenly Mui is still alive through this one, and there you have it, right?
That's the play of the game.
Exactly, and the thing that went right for them is the graviton, what it did was actually stop that last bit of dive that was going for Mui specifically. Xiaolin was also able to get his health topped off. that actually already picked out Mango Jai with the Doomfist there, so they didn't have that extra bit of healing. The Graviton was crucial because had it not been for that, all the members would have been far too low. They would have been completely overpowered by Libalent, who were absolutely on a roll there. So it was a great catch. Great piece of timing by Randy.
And a catch that should have, you kind of question now as well, maybe Hotari didn't see it at the time, but he got the Meteor Strike onto Mango Jai. With Meteor Strike, he can traverse any sort of terrain, so if he had got a Mui instead, that might have been a different fight, because Mui was one of the players that really cleaned up targets in the Graviton Surge. The Grav was good, you're absolutely right, but the Grav was cleaned up by Mui, predominantly.
Absolutely.
So, Hotari's target selection there is something we've seen from Meteor Strikes from this man so far, even on Nepal. In fact, especially on Nepal, was kind of struggled to see, like, where do I want to put this Meteor Strike? Am I going to find someone? Am I going to find anyone? There was a moment on Shrine when he had a lot of different Hong Kong Attitude members he could have picked. He decided to go back and went for a Ching on the Winston instead, and just, you do see that lack of ability to find something useful to get with that ultimate. But otherwise, punches have been on point.
Yeah, absolutely. You can also as well just see the risk inherent in diving for specifically the Ana. You do actually risk, because of how telegraphed the move is, having them just move that little bit out of your range, not getting one shot, and they know exactly where to place the sleep dart and when to time it, right? So you can actually find yourself in basically the worst possible situation. You haven't killed anyone and you're asleep behind enemy lines. You kind of force your team into the situation when they have to push. That being said, we have to give credit where credit's due. Hotari was able to pull that off. Yep. He did have decent target selection, and I kind of touched on it before. It was just that last little bit of execution for Libalent to turn that into getting it over the line and winning fights.
Right, well, getting it over the line is probably quite important here, because they have one more opportunity to secure themselves at least a map or something, or maybe a reverse sweep might be in the books for Libalent Supreme, but that's all going to happen very, very soon. Map 3 is coming up, and that's happening after this break. All right, welcome back now. Thank you for joining us once again after that short break, as we're about to head into map number 3 in the series between Libalent Supreme and Hong Kong Attitude. If you were wondering who those beautiful gentlemen holding up the trophy was in the final moments of the intro, that's Flash Halls, and they're coming up at the end of the night. But before we get to that, we got to finish off this match.
That we absolutely do, and well, in the case of Hong Kong Attitude, you want to finish it right here, right now. In the case of Libalent, you would like to go to the full 5 here. That is your one shot at winning, because they are really back up against the wall here. Going on to Assault now, and it's also Hong Kong Attitude's pick.
So it doesn't get any easier for Libalent Supreme, and the thing you have to really consider here for Libalent Supreme, when you start to rank up the teams a little bit, remember, the 2 Japanese teams from last season are gone, which means if you want to look at last season's standings, Machi and Mega Thunder would be filling up those bottom slots, except Machi already has one on the board, so does Mega Thunder. The only team that hasn't from that sort of middle pack of last season is Hong Kong Attitude. They're sitting on the same score line match-wise as Libalent Supreme, so technically, Hong Kong Attitude, based on last season's standing, is now the lowest ranked team in the competition. And if you're Libalent Supreme, and you're not going to beat Hong Kong Attitude, that's a big problem.
And also one of the factors here is one of the 2 teams that came in as a replacement now for Detonator and Sun Sister has been Ardiant, who are sitting at the top of the standings. Yeah. They are looking good. They're looking top 3 material no matter what right now. So it's not even a case of, if it weren't for these 2 teams here, who would be the bottom 2? It's like these 2 teams are here, and one of them is definitely not bottom 2. Yeah. So who's it going to be?
Exactly. So you have a very difficult task ahead of you for Libalent Supreme. I do want to talk about the map pick a little bit as well, because Volskaya has come up for Hong Kong Attitude, and while this is, I would like to say, a good map for Hong Kong Attitude, a few hiccups last night. If you remember from last night's match, Hong Kong Attitude against Mega Thunder, what actually happened there was Hong Kong Attitude had a decent defense, lost A somewhat quickly. Mega Thunder then failed to cap out B of their attack on Volskaya, but then Hong Kong Attitude the other way around. You expected them to win that. All they had to do was go into B, cap a 3rd, but they couldn't get past A, and Mega Thunder full held them on the first point.
The interesting thing to me that kind of came out of that is I found that surprising, because Volskaya is especially on point A, and also to a significant degree on point B, a really great map for Sombra, which in my opinion, Mango Jai is really, really solid at. I mean, he's always, just even back in Season 1, been one of the more inventive Sombras. We saw him be the first person in this tournament specifically to pull out an attack Sombra on Temple of Anubis, and it went off to great effect. We often see him totally outdoing enemy Sombras when there's a head-to-head, and it's really surprising to not see him shining on these assault maps when he picks the Sombra. He's
tell
doing
you what.
okay, but he's not shining the way he used to.
That's the reason, part of the reason might be the fact that for that attack, anyway, the attack that Honkai Attitude had against Mega Thunder on Volskaya, he didn't run the Sombra, he ran a Soldier instead. So something Honkai Attitude have been trying to do on Volskaya as their new set standard play, at least for now this weekend, is running a triple DPS lineup. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mui either picks up their Sombra or Mui plays another DPS, but either way, they are running triple DPS on the Volskaya attack, at least for Cap A. Unfortunately, unsuccessful against Mega Thunder.
Yeah, for now at least. Once again, it has only been a couple of days of competition. And of course, as it is, Hong Kong Attitude are 2-0 up in this series, so maybe this is the one where the triple DPS does the work. Maybe this is where they pull it off, or indeed maybe they don't. Maybe they do swap back onto the Sombra and they maybe find a bit of their old magic. In any case, they are looking in good shape right now, and this is shaping up to potentially be the much needed win.
And you know, it is a little bit unfortunate to see Libalent Supreme in this situation where they're so far behind, but at the same time for Hong Kong Attitude, this is kind of what you want to see out of the team that had the biggest Cinderella story of the OPC Season 1, because now Hong Kong Attitude are really coming into their own. It is good to see them pick up the maps, potentially pick up a match here after this map, if they do well, because players like Ating have really stepped up. We talked about that. Shai Lin is now an absolute monster. I rate him so far over the 2 days, now coming to 3 days of competition, as probably among the top 3 DPSs overall that I've seen, behind Ursa and maybe one other. But, you know, for Hong Kong Attitude, Randy as well has to be that story. So Hong Kong Attitude is in general, now that they're winning, it does look good. I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do, I'll be honest, you do have to feel a little bit for Libalent Supreme in this situation as well, because here's the thing, they are actually a very good team. Let's not dispute that. From a lot of very solid teams, they qualified. They earned their spot here.
They beat Din out of Korea.
Exactly. No two ways about it. They earned their spot here fair and square, and they earned it in spectacular fashion, right? The unfortunate thing, though, is they come into this tournament now against 6 other teams who spent 3.5 months playing against each other non-stop. They push the standard of play up and up and up. So you have to come in, you have to match that standard, and then you have to start beating that standard. They're already above the standard of the teams that were eliminated, and that just might not be enough, at least not to start with. And like we said before, there's only 6 weeks. You don't have a lot of time to find your
I think you just said as well, 6 teams that have been in this competition. The 7th team is Ardian, who are now completely destroying that competition, at least so far. So absolutely a tough journey for Libalent Supreme. It doesn't end just yet. In fact, it is still just starting, and Pepper starting things off now on the fire again.
Yeah, spicy as it were, and they're running this pharmacy. They really do seem to favor this combo, but of course we see Mango Jai as well on the defense here running this Sombra. Pretty stock standard, but good to see him back on that, to be sure, and I'd like to see him really pull it off to great effect. But Hotade already taking out Mui. Trade back onto Kasuke may not be enough, because they've still got Celine. They're keeping everyone topped off, and Ating in a lot of trouble. In full retreat, great rocket catch. They do lose a couple of members while that's happening, and Celine a little bit too far from that res here. Not spending too much time in Pepper's pocket, hasn't needed to, but Mango picking off Jasper here. EMP is indeed available, and this could be what they need to close it out as Hotade goes down. Mango Jai, this is the Sombra we know and love.
Absolutely, in Hong Kong Attitude, you're now starting to see their game plan come out to fold. They see the Pharaoh coming, they know, okay, we don't have the best options against this. We had Mui, he went down very early, so for Libalent Supreme, smart pickoff. They knew the Soldier was their biggest threat. Once the Soldier was gone, though, they couldn't secure any other kills. And for Hong Kong Attitude, ignore the Pharaoh, go for the ground targets. They did that.
Oh, that's a great one there. The Pulse Bomb doesn't quite pop the mech, but with the EMP, Mango Jai is able to finish it off himself. That is all the ultimates they had at their disposal, but they're able to pick off Jasper. They're closing it in on Darrington now, who may just well go down if he's not careful. Actually, has just been able to successfully retreat, but it means that Libalent didn't really get a fight to charge up ultimates, and Hong Kong Attitude are starting to cycle theirs.
I think the good news for Libalent here is actually they got away with minimal losses there. That could have been an absolute disastrous moment. They could have lost a lot more. They lost a mech, and there the EMP didn't really hit too much there for Libalent Supreme. They crawled out of that situation. They do come back to fight another day.
And they've got the ultimates to do it this time, the key DPS ultimates. Hotade wasting no time, gets it out before the EMP as well, already a ting down. Hasn't really got anyone else in his sights just yet. Oh dear, the Rocket Barrage not finding much, but the res will keep them going in this fight now as they've got the time. Unfortunately losing Jasper's mech, but they're closing out the kills anyway as Randy is down and out for the count, looking for CQB now, and they're very lean for ultimates. Shailin needs to close it out with a Pulse Bomb, but I'll tell you what, if anyone can do it, it's Shailin. Still trading blow for blow. Yeah, need attack visor desperately, but closing out on Celine, and now Jasper down means they can starts to pick the fight apart. Hotari is going to go down with a big fight, but it has been held for now by Hong Kong Attitude.
There's still 1v1 going on too. Winston's just duking this one out, and Hong Kong Attitude should be flooding back in at
That's
any
it. That's a
moment.
war for the Planet of the Apes.
And the apes won. Let me tell you, spoiler, the apes won.
Yeah. I like that they've made a full series out of those movies because we know
I haven't
how
seen any of them.
But the thing is, we know how it all ends. Like, eventually, it becomes just the Planet of the Apes. Like, that was the original movie. We already know what's going. In any case, they're actually really great movies. But this defense here, Mango Jai with the EMP back up, looking to stop the war before it starts.
And Libalent Supremers, they've gone all in on the far here. They can't even swap off anymore. They don't have any time left. They got 47 seconds. Mango Jai on another EMP hits a lot of targets this time around.
Great catch. Hasn't quite got the closeouts though, but picking Celine means Libalent aren't going to get the res, which they were indeed close to. Jasper loses the mech. Darrington is going to try and just stay alive. They've got just enough time to reset and come back in.
Just enough time, and still going to have to stick onto this combo. I think the key to victory here, in fact, the closest Libalent Supreme have had to capping this one out was a good resurrection. So if they can get that, they're going to be in a great spot. If he gets hacked too early, if Selene gets hacked by Mango, it's all over.
And the thing is, the ultimate they need to draw out crucially before that res is the pulse bomb, which is just coming up now, but they're still probably going to fight through an EMP late in this fight. Good hack onto Jasper, by the way, as now Libalent are just going to have to go for it anyway with 5 seconds left. Let's see what they can do. Hotari, Dragon Blade, what's he got? CQB, that's a good start. Looking for Mango Jai desperately, but gets straight into the EMP. They need to close out more. Selene goes down before he can res, and that could be all they have left in the tank here as Pepper wants to get this rocket barrage off, but he could not avoid the self-destruct. Unfortunately, going back into the sky is just a bit early, and Mango Jai able to reset himself into this fight. Last ditch out of Jasper, finds nothing. 43.5% is the marker to beat for Hong Kong Attitude.
You got to say Mango Jai is definitely I was going to say the EMP there, but rather MVP. MVP of the EMPs, I should probably say.
The EM MVP.
Yeah. Although he was the only one playing Sombra, so I don't know how that works. But either way, the MVP of the match for me.
The MV-EMP is the most valuable electromagnetic pulse.
Kind of like the one on King's Row. Is it the Dorado one's an electromagnetic pulse as well? I don't know. Something like that. But Mango Jai played out of his mind. That you saw.
Oh yeah, the payload goes, that's an electromagnetic pulse. You're right, you're right.
It is. So, you know, the way to win Dorado is actually you play Sombra, you just run to the end and you just EMP.
Yeah,
anyway.
you play No Limits and just have 6 Sombras.
But back to this match, what I did want to say about Mango Jai is you look at the early stages of that game, and usually we're used to Shiolin populating the kill feed. He still did that, but actually Mango Jai was the one picking up a lot of early kills, early EMPs. Some of them, you know, didn't get full effect onto Libalent Supreme. Doesn't really matter. They were able to get enough to stop Libalent Supreme. Every single EMP, you could say, was useful, was good, had a good result, regardless of how many kills they got. It got the intended, result that they wanted out of it. Please dance.
Come on, robot.
He's not feeling it. You got to pay him a quarter.
So here's the thing, right? I feel like I'm getting gaslighted by this map somehow. I'm starting to doubt that I ever saw that robot
Still
dance.
on my Twitter.
Yeah. If it weren't for the fact that it is on Twitter, I would at this point be completely convinced that we'd all just like had a shared hallucination or something. Like
you got to email Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, please make the robot dance, Jeff.
No, does the robot on Volskaya actually dance?
I feel like the thing is,
yours truly.
I feel like Jeff
concerned
would
fan.
actually gaslight me.
Like
I feel like he'd be like, no, of course not. Don't be silly.
You think we'd program that into the game?
Yeah, do you think we'd waste valuable resources and time programming that sort of Easter egg? Come on. In any case, out the gate now, not wanting to waste any time is Hong Kong Attitude.
So this is the triple DPS.
Yeah. They are going to see if they can make it work. They've had a bit of a hard time kind of covering this movement in the past, but this time pulled off without a hitch for now. Going to be fighting through Celine Sombra, though.
Well, it's not impossible. Mega Thunder have full held on A against Hong Kong Attitude before Libalent Supreme.
And that's the start.
Yep, it is. And Mango Jai got picked out early by Mega Thunder last time.
And that's all they really need. Hotari just looks for those one shots and he gets them. Jasper losing the mech means Randy losing it. Is just an even trade. They're not too sore from that one. And honestly, Hotari really pulling his weight here, just closing out the last few.
And it seems results-wise, at least, Doomfist has been his best pick. We've seen him now play a bunch of others. But the only time he really puts himself on the scoreboard, the only time he really makes the other time sweat so far with the rocket punches as a Doomfist. So I'm not surprised we're seeing that out one more time. And Selene nearly onto the EMP. That first fight win for Libalent Supreme, so important to set up the Sombra.
Yeah, it will be up no matter what at some point during this fight. Also, Pepper Pulse Bomb earlier than Shaolin. That is not something we see often. And already the closeout on Mango Jai as Randy loses the mech as well. They finally pick off Hotari, but they're just looking so rough, so much the worse for wear, and got run completely away from the point. Libalent are really reading Hong Kong attitude here and just running the squishy comp in circles.
Yeah, it's a lot of kills as well. Shaolin way out of position. He's probably going to look for spawn kills if somehow Hong Kong Attitude can get a number of picks there, or Shaolin's going to have to rejoin his team eventually. So, and a late kill onto Randy as well, who had to suicide. I mean, for Hong Kong Attitude, definitely not the start you wanted, and you are now starting to think about that Mega Thunder game as well. You know you've been first held before. You don't want it to happen one more time.
And speaking of happen one more time, they're going to be able to go in through the sound barrier because
deadly.
of how low a Ting and Muya. It could indeed, it is indeed for Mango Giant. A Ting gets slam dunked straight off the back of it as well. Hotare, there's no one left for him to kill. They've all just retreated or they've died. And this is just the same thing again. Mango, he's just going to take it on the chin, finally change off onto a secondary healer. They were just losing their tanks far too quickly.
Absolutely. I think Mui on the Soldier as well has had a bit of a struggle, not just today, but in the entire weekend. He's just kind of been off the mark compared to some of the more shiny soldiers that we've seen in the competition. So he is on a Genji. I do like this pick up from him. Something a little bit more traditional for Hong Kong Attitude.
Oh, but straight into an EMP is what it is. They do get the Dragon Blade out first, so Mui can turn it back around with that, and he indeed does as he picks Darrington before he can ult, but he loses his life to Hotari. Oh, the trades, they just keep coming through. The economics are out of control. Pepper low, not quite dead yet, but in a lot of trouble here as Hong Kong Attitude are getting themselves set up. The self-destruct from Randy to make the space. A Ting with the ult as well. A lot of displacement. Darrington is going to be dashing back to this one, but the members on the point are looking lean for Libalent Supreme now with Shaolin. And that just could be all they need. Indeed it is to close out the series. Of course, it's Shaolin.
Clutch timing from Mui there to be able to get this Dragon Blade out early. That could have been a very different story. Get yourself hacked in the EMP. Don't use the Dragon Blade. The 2 kills that he actually got there was pretty critical for Hong Kong Attitude to secure that fight. Losing 2 members early for Libalent Supreme, meaning you only have 4 members available. Suddenly, you have a guy like Shaolin. He's in his element. This is where he really starts to shine. And I'm not surprised that Mui is getting a little bit more results now, really pulling his weight for the team for Hong Kong Attitude, something that wasn't questioned before.
And also, speaking of big differences, I mean, look at the difference between them running Mango Jai on that healer as opposed to the DPS. And it's not because he's a bad soldier player. It just seems that in general, they're a little bit slicker with their positioning and what they need to do, with who and when. When they're not running that triple DPS, it just seems that they have, as a counterpoint indeed to what we saw on King's Row, they just seem to have a much harder time kind of covering their squishy members when they're setting up those first movements when they are running triple DPS.
And I like that Hong Kong Attitude swallowed their pride there, because yesterday against Mega Thunder, they tried to keep the triple DPS going for as long as they could, and they paid the price for it because that should have been a map for Hong Kong Attitude to win, and they dropped it in what would be a pretty upsetting manner because they had such a great run of Volskaya. This time around, they said, no, we're not doing that again. We are actually going to say, if it's not working, it's not working, and we will change it up. And something Libalent Supreme, I think, could actually afford to look at, because they tried to make the pharmacy work again. It did somewhat work. The first res was good, but Selene dropping the second res, unfortunately, I mean, that's just the nail in the coffin for your Volskaya run.
And the thing is, they kind of ended up in this really unfortunate spot where they were just kind of in a bit too deep. I mean, the first res, you're right, it had been good. They got a good amount of progress on the cap itself, got themselves past that first third. They only needed the one good fight, but suddenly the ultimate times had just gone a little bit off. They wanted to keep the Mercy for the res, which meant they kind of had to keep the Pharah. The res didn't come through, the Pharah didn't quite pull the weight, and it just ended up falling to bits. And that is the risk-reward of pharmacy. That's just kind of a factor here, but you're right, it is in stark contrast to Hong Kong Attitude, who ran something that they had clearly been practicing, they clearly want to try, they clearly feel works for them, like the Libalent must feel the pharmacy works for them on Volskaya, and then changed it up when it wasn't. So you've absolutely got to respect the discipline there from Hong Kong Attitude. That said, this is not the last we're going to see of triple DPS out of them, guaranteed.
Probably not. I think Hong Kong Attitude will go back to the drawing board and work on that one more time, and Libalent Supreme might want to do the same thing for, amongst many things, that they've learned from this weekend, because going into next weekend, like we've already mentioned, what are they going to do now? They've gone past Hong Kong Attitude, not able to pick up a single map. Now they have to play against both Blank and Flash Wolves in the coming weeks. So if this has been a difficult weekend for Libalent Supreme, next weekend I gotta say is much more difficult. And then the weekend after that, your only 2 matches left after Blank and Flash Wolves is Mega Thunder and Machi. Don't forget, I don't want to pull out the crime scene ball where you're drawing the red lines here. But when you really got to look at it, Mega Thunder beat Hong Kong Attitude 3-0 already, and then Machi on day 1 beat Mega Thunder 3-0. So I don't want to draw the line too hard, but those are the results. They speak for themselves.
It all adds up to like a white chalk outline against the Libalent Supreme logo on the ground or something.
This is part of the ARG for Sombra, by the way. We're still doing it. It's not over just yet.
It's all connected. Like, Sombra 2.
Yeah. Sombra 2 is coming. That's the next hero. You get it. Sorry, support fans. It's going to be another
Sombra
DPS.
2. Yeah,
Sombra
Blizzard,
2.
you can have that one for free.
But it does. But the thing is, it doesn't get easier, right? For Libalent Supreme, you're going up against the top 2 finishers from OPC Season 1, and then 2 teams that have beaten the team that you just lost to.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I touched on this just a moment ago. They are one of these 2 teams that has come into Season 2 through the promotion relegation tournament, which means minimum requirement, you got to match the level of the bottommost teams there. They haven't quite done that. They're just a little bit short, and it's just these little bits of execution, but because they've dropped these 3 games, they are now very far behind in the grand scheme of things.
All right, let's talk about this replay here. What we have got it up, Mango Jai picking up a lot of kills. So this is the initial push on out through from Libalent Supreme. They are running their pharmacy combo. You do see Mango Jai's point of view from their bottom right side, and he is picking up. He gets another one to Jasper, so he got himself 3 kills, or at least 2.5 kills over the course of all this, and there it is, one onto Hotate as well.
Yeah, and part of that close on Hotate, by the way, was actually he was able to get the hack off with the right click, which is really significant. It's something that we don't get to see a lot in the moment with Sombras, but it is one of the most influential parts of her kits, and the other target we would often see Mango Jai getting. And I think this is in fact, what was going wrong for themselves sometimes on the attack, but the other target we were seeing him get a lot was the Diva. Jasper was having a hard time with that, but Randy, I feel, was having a harder time, because when Randy was getting hacked, they only had 1 healer. They didn't have a way to cover that 3rd DPS. In any case, the game went the way it went, right? Hong Kong Attitude still closed it out, and a well-deserved MVP as well.
And the funny thing about it, that MVP award is for Shailin. You might as well put Winston on there. You might as well put the Reaper on there as well.
I would always put the Winston on there because of how rarely we see Shailin on Winston, and he still dominated the kill feed.
He at this point, it almost doesn't matter what he has played. Everything he's played so far this weekend has been pretty good, but as a tracer, you got to rate this guy quite highly now, because even from Season 1, like I previously mentioned, probably the number 3 tracer in the competition after Bacon Jack and I Eat You Up, and now looking to get even further. And I think for Bacon Jack that we're going to see later tonight, it will be interesting to see if he still pulls that same amount of weight, because Shailin has stepped up so many times, and not only when his team is winning, when his team's not winning, when his team's sort of winning, it's winning, losing, and anywhere in between, Shailin has been good.
Yeah, exactly. And look, it's lit a fire under those players. Whether or not he has surpassed them is a different question. In any case, it's interview time.
Let's get to this interview now, the post-match with Randy, and I'll be translating over.
Hi, Randy，先跟大家打个招呼吧。
好，大家好，我是 HK 的 Randy。
Hello everyone, I'm HK's Randy.
他刚刚在对问题的时候，其实就已经很害羞了。
没错。
那我想问一下，因为这一周是上场第3次了，
So
你
your
觉得一切
third
都
match
顺利
today?
吗？因为今天其实打得非常快。
So some pretty quick matches today.
对于前面2场，我觉得是有遇到一些问题，但是
We had some
我们
problems
队伍有在
first 2 days,
改善。
but we've
问
made some
题是来
changes
自
to
于
fix
你
that.
本身还是队友？
队伍，
压力吗？还是
Have you
沟
felt
通
some pressure?
我觉得都有。
啊，
I've
也
definitely
是
felt a
在
lot of
磨合
mixed
阶段
emotions.
就对了。
对。那因为在这个人体选手是在 HK 已经1个季了，在第2个季才有机会担任这个先发，而在本周已经有3次先发的机会。虽然在今天的这个发挥，在副坦位的这一个也是一个很出色的发挥。那我想说，在这一段时间你是怎么调试自己的心情
So how did you really improve yourself between last season and now, moving on to the core roster and as
第
Flex?
1季的时候是有时候会想要上场，
So
就是想要打的
had some
这
close
个心
moments
态，但是
the first season to playing.
后来我自己发现自己的角色对于副坛这个位置
But I feel like
还不够熟悉。
I was a
这
weak
是我
player
刚
from
刚
season 1,
跟你
specifically in the
聊
flex
的不
spot.
太一样啊。刚刚说我的角色池是非常广的啊。
上台要谦虚一点。
对，因为我的第2个问题是说，在这个本周，
HKA 是有拿出132这样的套路。那在
You're playing
你
some
是从
triple
不团
DPS
位
now?
转换成法拉这个位置的话，
So if you
是不
move
是
from Flex to
在
Pharah-
未来也会有这样的这个机会呢？
Is that something you guys are doing too?
应该是会有，但是要看队伍的需求。
Yeah, we
Okay,
might bring
okay,
out
好的。
a triple
那
DPS
就
with
看
me
一
on
下
DPS as
团
well.
队是怎么抠的嘛，教练说什么就做什
So
么。
who calls
尤
this?
其是
Who
现
sort
在，
of
因
decides
为
this?
军靠选手已经在这个时间点是没有上场，
So
那
Jin
他
Kao
这
hasn't
个
come on
战
yet?
术的层面是非常广的，所以说我觉得人地选手擅长的这个部分的话，有助于他们这个阵容上面比较多元。
好了，再次恭喜 HK 获得这场比
Does
赛
feel
胜
like
利。那我们
Randy's
休息一
definitely
下，精
stepped
彩
up
比
to
赛
the
马
plate
上
while
回
Hong
来。
Kong, Holiday Cal, otherwise known as Jin Cal, has been on that bench. So there it is, Randy. And interesting thoughts. He had some close moments
Yeah.
last season where he could have come on to match, but he himself felt like he wasn't ready for it.
Which I think it shows, especially for what is the youngest player on this team. I think actually he's the youngest player in this tournament.
Shailin, I think
It's a
they're
lot
both
of,
the same. I think Shailin
Yeah.
and Randy are the same age.
in any case, it shows a lot of maturity.
Yeah.
And actually that is something I think really pervades this team. It's something that has actually helped them. They really have this kind of maturity just about the whole thing. We talked about it more in season 1, you know, all the factors of the long tournament and fatigue and discipline and things like that. It's something that this team just never seems to have any trouble with. And I think a final thing there with Randy as well is we kind of talked about this thing, or used to talk about, you know, the Aputo effect, where you have this one player who is just really, really solid in your team, and you almost want him playing like every single role. Shaolin is a great player, may right now be the best tracer in this tournament, a very well-earned MVP, and he looks good on basically anything he plays. But the rest of his team, Randy included, are no slouches.
Absolutely, they definitely stepped up to the plate, and 2 more teams will be stepping up to the plate very soon. Ardiant take on Mega Thunder when we return, just about shy of about a quarter of an hour, so go get yourself a little bit of a sandwich, whatever you need. But when we come back, OPC Season 2 continues.